In the glittering world of empires and crowns, she was the one queen who longed not for power, but for freedom. There are some stories in history that glitter with beauty and bleed with pain. This here is one of them. The story of a young girl from Bavaria, whose free soul and wild heart accidentally caught the eye of an emperor, and was never truly free again. Cherryblossom, the wild princess of Bavaria. In the green valleys of Bavaria, far away from Vienna's golden halls, a little girl ran barefoot through gardens, chasing butterflies and dreams. Her name was Elisabeth Amalie Eugenie, but everyone called her Cici. She was born in 1837, not in a palace, but in a countryside estate filled with laughter, music, and freedom. Her family was noble, but not grand. They loved nature more than etiquette, poetry more than politics. Her father, Duke Maximilian, was a free-spirited man, riding horses, playing music, writing poetry. And Cici was just like him. A wild soul trapped in a world that would soon demand perfection. A royal meeting that changed everything. At just 16, Cici traveled with her mother and elder sister Helen to Austria. The purpose? A royal engagement, but not for her. The young Emperor Franz Joseph was meant to marry Helen. But fate had other plans. When Franz Joseph saw Cici, not her sister, his heart stopped. She wasn't the polished, perfect princess they promised him. She was shy, innocent, and glowing with natural beauty. Her long chestnut hair fell like silk, her eyes sparkled like lake water, and her smile carried both mischief and purity. He turned to his mother and said quietly, "I will marry her, or no one." Within days, the announcement was made. The Emperor of Austria was engaged, not to Helen, but to her younger sister, Cici. Ring the golden wedding and the iron cage. Vienna celebrated. Fireworks lit the sky. Europe's most eligible emperor had chosen a common-hearted Bavarian girl. But while the world cheered, Cici trembled. She was too young to understand the weight of the crown that awaited her. When she arrived at the Hofburg Palace, the royal residence of the Habsburgs, she realized she wasn't walking into a fairy tale. She was walking into a gilded cage. The Empress Dowager, Archduchess Sophie, Franz's mother, didn't trust her. She thought Cici was too emotional, too free, too unroyal. Every move Cici made was judged. Every smile, measured. Every tear, hidden. Rose, the lonely empress. Though Franz Joseph loved her deeply, he was chained by duty. He followed rules, orders, and traditions, the same rules that slowly crushed Cici's spirit. The young empress, who once rode horses and climbed trees, now lived among marble walls and endless ceremonies. She was adored by the people, yet completely alone. Letters from her early days in Vienna reveal her pain. "I am no longer myself," as she wrote. "I feel like a bird whose wings have been clipped, and yet is expected to sing." A beauty both a blessing and a curse. Cici soon became a legend of beauty. Her hair reached down to her ankles, her waist barely 19 inches, and her face ethereal. She spent hours each day maintaining her appearance, because it was the only thing she could control. Behind that beauty, however, hid anxiety, depression, and heartbreak. She became obsessed with perfection, the only escape from her invisible cage. Court gossip whispered, as she is too beautiful to be real. But what they didn't know was that every smile she gave was paid for with loneliness. Dove hash, a silent cry for freedom. As years passed, Sisi withdrew from the palace life. She avoided the rigid court, choosing to travel alone, to Hungary, to Greece, to the seas she loved. She adored Hungary's people and its spirit. They called her our Queen of Hearts. And for the first time in years, she felt alive again. Her connection with Count Gyula Andrássy, the Hungarian statesman, became the subject of rumors. Some said it was love, others said it was friendship. But for Sisi, it was simple. He treated her like a woman, not a crown. Candle hashed the shadow that would change her forever. But life, as always, had its cruelty waiting. Her only son, Crown Prince Rudolf, grew up under the same suffocating palace rules that once crushed her. She saw herself in him, the same longing for freedom. And in him, she saw her greatest fear. The shadow of sadness that had haunted her now rested on her child. Little did she know, his fate would one day break her completely. In her search for freedom, she had found beauty, fame, and sorrow, but the real tragedy of Empress Elisabeth had only just begun. They called her the most beautiful woman in Europe. But behind the glittering portraits and the poems written for her, lived a heart silently breaking. For Empress Elisabeth, Sisi, beauty had become her only armor, and her deepest curse the weight of the crown. Years passed, and Sisi became more of a myth than a queen. She smiled in public, but her letters whispered sorrow. In her own words, "They see the crown upon my head, but not the chains around my heart." Her husband, Emperor Franz Joseph, remained loyal but distant, married more to the empire than to her soul. And in that cold palace, Sisi found no joy, only rituals, rules, and reminders of what she had lost: her youth, her laughter, her freedom. Crown a mother's heart, a broken home. Her son, Crown Prince Rudolf, was her reflection, brilliant, sensitive, and trapped. He loved freedom, art, and liberal ideas that Vienna's rigid monarchy would never allow. And like his mother, he suffocated under the same golden cage. Sisi loved him fiercely, but she had drifted too far. Her endless travels, her depression, her refusal to live the royal life had distanced her from him. By the time she realized how much he needed her, it was too late. The Mayerling tragedy. January 1889. A frozen morning outside Vienna. Servants knocked on the door of Mayerling hunting lodge, where Crown Prince Rudolf had spent the night. No one answered. When they finally forced the door open, they found the heir to the Austrian throne, lifeless. Beside him lay Baroness Mary Vatsira, a 17-year-old girl he loved. Both were dead, a tragic pact of forbidden love and despair. The empire was shaken. The press was silenced. And in the quiet halls of Vienna, one scream echoed louder than all: Sisi's. When the news reached her, she collapsed. Her only son. Her mirror. Her one light in the darkness, gone forever. She wrote in her diary, "The world has fallen apart. I am nothing but the mother of the dead. The woman who refused to heal." From that day, the Empress of Austria began to disappear, not from history, but from life. She wore only black. Her jewels gathered dust. She stopped sitting for portraits, stopped appearing in court. Even her mirrors were covered. She could no longer bear to see her own reflection. Everywhere she went, she carried her grief like a shadow. And she began to wander, from one corner of Europe to another, always moving, never staying. They called her the Wandering Empress. Water waved the sea became her kingdom. She traveled to Greece, her favorite land, where marble ruins whispered peace. She built a palace there, called Achillean, dedicated to her love of Greek mythology. In those halls stood statues of Achilles, brave, wounded, beautiful, and doomed, much like her own soul. Circe often walked along the sea cliffs, her veil flying in the wind, her face hidden, her heart open only to the waves. "The sea understands me," she once said. "It is beautiful, and it is endless." Rose the myth of Circe grows. As years passed, stories about her became legend. People rarely saw her face. She covered it with a black fan whenever photographers tried to capture her. The public began to speak of her as if she were a ghost queen, too perfect to be real, too tragic to be forgotten. Her beauty, even in her 40s, was mesmerizing. Her hair, still long and shining, reached down to her knees. Her waist was so slim it seemed unreal. And her melancholy eyes, they said, could silence an entire ballroom. She inspired poets, painters, and dreamers. But she herself dreamed only of death. Speech ballooned her words to a friend. A close companion once asked her, "Your Majesty, why do you never rest?" Circe smiled faintly and said, "Because peace no longer belongs to me. I gave it away the day I became empress." Those who met her said she had become almost spiritual, detached from the world, obsessed with fate, poetry, and lost. An empress without a throne. By the 1890s, Empress Elisabeth rarely appeared at royal functions. She had turned her back on Vienna's courts, on fame, and even on power. She traveled incognito, under false names, living as an ordinary traveler, often refusing royal treatment. It was as if the crown no longer existed, only the woman beneath it. But destiny wasn't done with her story yet. One more chapter remained. A final act that would turn her into legend forever, is she had lost her youth, her freedom, and her son, but not her grace. And as history would soon see, even death would bow before her dignity. The girl who never wanted to be a queen, in the grand empire of Austria, where snow-kissed mountains met golden palaces, a young girl was born, Elisabeth Amalie Eugenie, better known to history as Circe. She wasn't raised to be royal. She was a wild spirit, a lover of horses, poetry, and freedom. Her laughter echoed through the forests of Bavaria, far from the stiff etiquette of imperial courts. But fate, as it often does, had its own plans. At the age of 16, Circe accompanied her mother and sister to Austria. The trip was meant for her sister Helene, who was to be engaged to the Emperor, Franz Joseph. But the Emperor's heart had other intentions. When he saw Elizabeth, shy, radiant, and untamed, he fell instantly in love. Against all royal expectations, Franz Joseph declared that he would marry Circe, not Helene. The world called it a fairy tale. But for Circe, it was the beginning of her imprisonment. From the very first day at the Viennese court, she felt suffocated. The heavy jewels, endless rules, and political expectations turned her from a free spirit into a caged bird. The Empress, once full of life, began to fade behind royal curtains of formality and duty. Her mother-in-law, Archduchess Sophie, took control of her life, Even her children were taken away to be raised by the court. In her private letters, Sisi wrote, "I am a shadow walking through palaces of gold." She was only a teenager, and yet she had to play the role of an empress, the queen who refused to be forgotten. As years passed, Sisi became a symbol of beauty and mystery across Europe. Her long, flowing hair reached her knees, and her beauty rituals became legendary. But her obsession with perfection hid something darker, a battle with herself. She fasted for days, trained for hours, and avoided court life whenever possible. She traveled restlessly, from Greece to England, from Corfu to Switzerland, always searching for peace that royalty could never offer. Her husband adored her, but their love was distant, swallowed by politics and sorrow. And then came tragedy. Her only son, Crown Prince Rudolf, the heir to the Austrian throne, took his own life in what became known as the Mayerling incident. That night shattered Sisi's soul forever. She began wearing black, never removing her mourning clothes. She refused portraits and hid her face behind veils and fans. The Empress became a ghost of her former self, wandering the world, haunted by grief. "The world is too heavy," as she once said, and I am too light to carry it." Her beauty remained, but her spirit, the one that once ran wild through Bavarian forests, was gone. The Empress who became eternal. In 1898, while visiting Geneva under an assumed name, Empress Elisabeth tried to enjoy a quiet walk by Lake Geneva. But destiny found her again, not in a palace, but on a simple lakeside street. An Italian anarchist named Luigi Lucchini, seeking to kill a symbol of monarchy, approached her. He didn't even know who she truly was, only that she was royal. With a sharpened file, he struck her once in the chest. Sisi didn't even realize she was fatally wounded at first. She walked back to her ship, whispering, "What has happened to me?" Moments later, she collapsed. The Empress, who had been trapped by crowns, broken by sorrow, and chased by loneliness, finally found peace. Her death shocked Europe. But her legend only grew stronger. Today, Sisi remains one of history's most tragic and fascinating figures, a woman who was born for freedom but forced into a throne. Her story is not one of power, but of resilience, of a heart that refused to bow before fate. "I belong to the stars," as she once wrote, "and not to the earth." And perhaps she truly does. Sometimes, the most beautiful souls are the ones who suffer in silence. Empress Elisabeth's story reminds us that behind every crown is a heart, and sometimes that heart beats not for glory, but for freedom.